What's up, people? Welcome to another exciting weekly edition of the Black and Gold Hour podcast. It's your host, Merv, and I'm excited. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited because football is back. Training camp has started this week. And honestly, this might be one of those seasons. This might be the most excited I am about a season in a while because it marks the beginning of a new era. There are a lot of training camp battles, and it's been a lot going on the past 7 days. So here to kind of break it down with me, I'm happy to have him on the show today. He covers the Saints on Neworleans.Football.com, and he's an analyst for Wwltv. Here with me today, I have Nick Underhill. How are you today, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, man.
No, man, I really appreciate it. We in Saints Twitter community, we follow you, we check in your tweets, and we're going to be looking at them all this training camp and all this season. So I'm happy to have you on before we really get into training camp that starts Thursday. So I want to ask you, and just something that I always do when I have guests on the show, I like to ask them, what kind of led them to be drawn to the New Orleans Saints, and what led you to actually creating content covering the New Orleans Saints as well?
Yeah, so for me, it was really just a job opportunity. I was covering the Patriots. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I was just trying to get on wherever I could coming out of Erie, PA. And my first opportunity to cover the NFL led me to New England. And I was covering them, and they had a job down here at the Advocate. They reached out. I came down. I interviewed, toured the city and everything. Just really liked the opportunity, liked the vibe. So came down here. For the 2019 season, I had a job back up in New England. I was covering the Patriots for The Athletic. I got there, and 2 months later, it was like instant regret. And I just had to be back down here. So, I think you could say I'm a fan of the city. Covering the team is more of a job for me, but really it's probably more accurate to kind of call it like a calling at this point, because just putting out stuff and just the way Saints fans are and the way they consume everything and the way they interact with the team, that just kind of gives you life when you're creating this stuff, and it pushes you to do more and to be better. And just that feedback between the consumer, the fans, people that read stuff, listen to podcasts. That just gives me so much more energy. And that was one of the things I really noticed when I went back to New England, just the way they interact with their team compared to the way Saints fans do. I mean, I kind of call that corporate, and this is family business. And, family business just has a lot more warmth to it. And, I don't think I'll ever leave this place again. I mean, it's where I want to do it. And, Saints fans are just unmatched.
Right. And you picked the right team to do it for. My father and his side of the family is from New Orleans, so it's just a different culture. They can be 0-16, the fans are still going to have a party. Right. Me growing up in Maryland and Virginia area, I'll go to a game in Charlotte or DC, and it's Saints fans packed out. They travel for their team. They love their club. And if you're creating content for the New Orleans Saints, they're showing that support and love. They're going to give you those comments, and we're going to have that conversation because they love to talk Saints football. And that's why we're here today, to talk Saints football. So let's kind of go back over the last 15 years. Sean Payton has been an incredible coach for the New Orleans Saints. And you recently wrote an article about how this might be the single biggest challenge for Sean Payton and the coaching staff this upcoming season. I want to ask you, what in your opinion, has made the coaching staff with Sean Payton so great over the years? And what is the biggest challenge for him this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say it's the biggest challenge for Sean since 06 coming in. And, that was just, they didn't really know what they had, and they kind of figured it out. For the rest of the coaching staff, the year Payton was gone was probably a little bit harder, but, for Sean himself, he wasn't part of that. So, look, I mean, I just think the uncertainty in everything that they're going to have to overcome. And I think there's probably so much that they took for granted with the stability and the things that Brees did. And I think there's just going to be a ton of little things that they figure out. Oh man, we got to actually think about coaching this now. And we didn't have to before because it kind of took care of itself. So it's a lot of those things. The biggest challenge, singularly, and I wish there was a more creative answer for this, but I think it is just quarterback. And he's got to find a way, if it's Jameis Winston, to not coach Jameis out of being Jameis, because I don't think you want him thinking and being scared back there. But at the same time, reining him in to where he isn't making bad decisions and he can still let it loose. There's a balance that they got to figure out there. if it's Taysom, it's just reimagining the way that you've done things forever and coming up with a whole new offense and finding a way to get him to make faster decisions. Early on, it's overcoming all these losses in the depth and finding a way to scheme your way out of not having Mike Thomas. I mean, they've always had one wide receiver that just automatically was able to get open. It was Colson. It shifted to tight end for a while with Jimmy Graham. Then it was Mike Thomas. They don't have that right now. So when the offense isn't getting guys open, like, what do you do? So I think Payton's going to have to find a way to scheme everybody open, and there's not going to be that safety valve. So there's a lot they got to figure out, and they got to find new ways to be creative and just. But really, I think it's that main thing. It's just, I think Brees set the tone and did so much, and they're just going to have to find new ways to do just like little. Like, here's one example, like just in stretch every single day. Brees stretched longer than everybody, and there'd be a handful of guys that just like would follow his lead, and it was like a dumb standoff competition because like Brees wasn't going to get beat, and like that's just the tone you're setting every day in the very first most mundane thing, and then outside of that, who's going to bring that? So those are the things that I think they got to figure out this year.
So, and I agree with you on Drew Brees, and us Saints fans. For those who don't watch the team every single day, we just catch them on Sundays. We're a little spoiled by Drew Brees. I was talking to one of my buddies who's a big Tampa Bay fan. He lives in Tampa, and he talks about Jameis, and he talked about how Jameis can, improve with the New Orleans Saints. But he talked about how spoiled we were with Drew Brees, and the thing that we're most spoiled with is his efficiency, what he was doing on the field, the lack of incompletion. You didn't see a lot of incompletions from Drew Brees. You didn't see interceptions, at time, because Drew Brees will throw it at times, but the efficiency, the way he ran the offense, his leadership, his presence in the locker room, those are things that we're going to miss and start to see kind of unravel as we get into this upcoming season if there aren't parties who step up. But let me ask you about a specific position group. Going into this offseason, there were a lot of position groups that fans felt the Saints needed to address, whether it be receiver, linebacker, cornerback. And with the release of Janoris Jenkins, cornerback became one of those position groups that was, of dire need. So the New Orleans Saints picked up Paulson Adebo in the draft, and they recently signed Brian Poole. But I want to ask you, in your opinion, where do the Saints look for that number 2 outside corner?
Yeah, look, real quick, just on your last point too. I mean, it's been 15 years since they lost the game because of the quarterback, and they could this year possibly. Like, Brees didn't really make those mistakes that you're like, this guy cost us a game. Maybe a few over the years, but I mean, it's been a really long time. Cornerback, man, I mean, there's still a few out there. They could get Garyon Conley or someone like that. And I do think that could be a good fit on this team, just kind of like with Eli Apple, get him around the Ohio State guys, people he knows, and maybe he settles in and reaches his potential. One of the good things I think is every day that goes by without a Marshawn Lattimore suspension, I think it becomes more likely that he plays this year. I mean, I just looked yesterday, he doesn't even have a court date set yet in Cleveland. So like if the NFL is waiting for that to go through those proceedings to decide if they're going to suspend him for allegedly being in possession of a stolen handgun, that could bode well. So the slower that process goes, the better their odds of having him all season are. But look, I mean, they could sign one of these guys. They could, possibly try to trade for somebody. I don't know if Xavier Howard's actually available, but he wants to be available. And with how aggressive they were in the draft, trying to trade up for J.C. Horn and Surtain, I mean, we know that the willingness and the effort to trade next year's first round pick to get a corner is there. I mean, Howard's 28, but it'd be worth it. I think he's probably got 3-4, really good years left. They'd be a little tight with the cap. They'd have to find about $1 million to get him on because he has a $12 million hit. Saints have $11 million available, but you get him here, restructure that contract. You got your money for the season. So it could work financially. It's just if he's actually available is the main thing. And, it doesn't seem like Miami wants to trade him, but maybe he forces their hand. So, I mean, it's possible. I'm not going to write it off. It's a long shot, but it's still possible.
So let me ask you, just to piggyback off that, let's say the Saints are happy with what they have right now, and they're not able to make a move. Who plays that number 2 outside corner position?
I think going into it'd probably be Patrick Robinson, and then maybe Adebo wins the job during camp. And I think the Brian Poole signing speaks to that a little bit, just because if you got Patrick Robinson playing outside and then you got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the inside and Malcolm Jenkins is at strong safety, if there's an injury to Malcolm Jenkins or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson without Brian Poole, that's bringing P-Rob in to the slot, and now you got PJ Williams on the outside. So I think if you have pull on the team, you get an injury in the slot, he just replaces Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Malcolm Jenkins gets hurt, Chauncey moves back, you got pull in the slot. So you aren't disturbing two positions. So I think that was more of a depth move. Of course, they'll compete, and he was really good in New York the last 2 years. I don't think that he can beat out Chauncey for that job. But yeah, it's just building depth and making sure that you got guys. If you don't need them week 1, you're going to need them by week 12. I mean, that's just the nature of that position.
Right. And that's been one of those positions that's always kind of up and down for New Orleans Saints and the New Orleans Saints fans. And having Janoris Jenkins and even having Eli Apple before he got injured in Chicago, having those number 2 corners that can kind of hold it down was something that we take for granted, but we know how special it is, and we know what we're going to be looking for this upcoming season. But let's kind of switch to the other side of the football. Let's talk about the offense, and let's talk about Michael Thomas. He'll be out longer than we expected. First 6 games, or maybe a little bit less going into the beginning of the season. Now, the wide receiver group for the New Orleans Saints is a group that me personally, I've always kind of questioned, and I wanted the Saints to make wide receiver more of a priority personally going into this last year's draft. So I want to ask you, with Michael Thomas being out and the Saints recently signing Chris Hogan, do you believe the Saints organization needs to look for something else outside as a free agent or something like that in order to help this wide receiver group?
I do. I mean, I do. I don't know if they do. Their moves kind of seem like they're confident in what they have. And look, we're going to find out. I mean, like I said before, for 15 years, Sean's been able to get guys open. But I think the quarterback was a big part of that too. And having the most efficient quarterback in NFL history plays a big part in being able to get by with maybe lesser talent at that position. I think it's going to be hard for him, but again, they seem confident, and it seems like they're really confident in Callaway, maybe more so than people outside. And I think there's a high opinion of him within the fan base. But I mean, just not doing anything kind of tells me that they like a lot of the things that he's able to do. But it could end up in regret. I mean, it's tough because I really do believe in Sean Payton as a coach, and I've seen the offense work, and I've seen him turn Willie Snead into a guy that people actually believed was like a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. No, he's a 1,000-yard receiver with the Saints, and it's just things like that have happened. But you take Mike out, and now guys are able to cover Traquan Smith like a number 1 receiver. Can you get open against an Xavier Howard? I don't know. Callaway getting covered by the number 2 instead of the 3rd best player or whatever. Like it's just going to be a lot tougher for those guys to operate without Mike taking that pressure off. But I will say, what were the 2 games last year? It was Chicago, and the one before that, Sanders was out, Mike Thomas was out. They passed for like 270 and 280 in those games. So they did it in a very small sample. That's a dangerous way to look at it, but it's at least possible for them to move the ball with just those 2 guys on the field. But for 6 games, no Drew Brees, I'd do something, but I don't know. It's just kind of feeling like they're just going to roll with what they got.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad you kind of on the same energies inside as me, because it was a lot of wide receivers coming out of this draft. It was a lot of talent at wide receiver, and I know I talk with Saints fans, and we see Saints Twitter talk about how this wide receiver group does have the ability to step up in big moments, but we haven't seen it yet. So what I wanted to ask you is, without Michael Thomas, who is Jameis Winston's number 1 receiver in your opinion?
I think it's Traquan Smith, and I mean, at least those 2 have been working out together. It seems like every single day, and I think they'll get to camp and have good chemistry. I think there's a lot of stuff Traquan can do that maybe he wasn't able to do in the offense just because Brees couldn't throw the ball down the field. He was a very good 15 to 18-yard receiver in college, and I think he led the nation in deep catches his senior year, his last year there. So I mean, I think there's things that they can unlock. I think he can go down the field a little bit more, and but Traquan Smith, number 1 receiver, it's scary because look, I mean, he hasn't had more than 400 yards in any season. I don't think they have anybody on the team other than Alvin that's had 400 receiving yards in a season. And I mean, that's terrifying to look at, even if as much as you believe in the offense, you still want at least one. You need one guy. The saving grace is that it's temporary. If it's 6 games, it's 3 of those are Washington, the Giants, Carolina. I think those are winnable games. Packers will be tough. Seattle will be tough. Patriots, I think, are a mystery. They added a lot of people, but maybe they won't be able to score points. So I think at least 3 of them are winnable games. If you can get through those, Mike's back, Onyemata's back, whatever's going on with Lattimore is settled. Maybe you're still in position to have a solid season, but I mean, you got to just find a way to stay afloat while you're figuring those things out.
Right. And I want to ask you, just talking about the Saints offense, and when you're having a new quarterback, what's the best aid to a new quarterback? A strong running game. Do you believe the Saints will go to more of a run dominated, let it be led by Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray? Or do you believe the Saints will, go back to the pass happy offense now that they have the gunslinger and Jameis Winston?
I think it'll probably be kind of like how it was the last few years, controlled, maybe a few more shots down the field. I think they'll probably run the ball a little bit more. They got 2 strong blocking tight ends in Nick Van Ette and Troutman, so I think that lends itself to it. The other thing though is that they use the screen game and like these quick outs, and like the Mike Thomas slant is almost like a running play to, in some respects, it's just quickly getting the ball out, high percentage plays. So there'll be a lot of those, but yeah, I think, especially with Onyemata out, if your corners are a little bit weak, I mean, they gotta try to slow these games down. You don't want Jameis out there feeling like he's got to score 35 to win. If he's out there with that mentality, that's where you start getting the mistakes. So they got to protect him, by playing ball control, keeping the defense, just slow it down. Yeah. So I agree with you that I think in some respects it'll be a little bit more run heavy. I don't think they'll ever be like a run first team, but I could see them being a little bit more run oriented for sure.
Right. It's times where me as a Saints fan, I get a little frustrated. You'll see Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray break off for 6, 7, 8 yards, then they're running back to the sideline. So it's like, why don't we just go with what's working? We watch the Titans and we see Derrick Henry. The whole world knows he's getting the ball in that moment. He gets it, and it just seems like sometimes Saints, they want to definitely implement that passing game, and I'm sure they're going to do that next year with Jameis. But I would like to see the running backs definitely, be that big vital role and kind of carry the New Orleans Saints offense with the new quarterback under center. But let's kind of switch back to defense, and I want to talk about an article you wrote. You wrote about 15 scenarios that are most likely to happen, and ran down.
That thing got outdated quick. Onyemata was out. Mike's hurt.
Right. So it's all switched up right now. But I want to talk about one specific scenario you talked about, and it was Marcus Davenport getting 8 sacks this season. Now, Marcus Davenport has been kind of, a big conversation topic for New Orleans Saints and New Orleans Saints fans. Some believe that, he still has room to grow. Some believe he's, a lost cause. So I want to ask you, what are Marcus Davenport's opportunities for growth within the New Orleans Saints defense?
I think they still believe in him, and it's hard to write him all the way off. I'm at the point now where, last year coming into the season, I was going through, he had this many pressures. He was this close to the quarterback this many times. And, the almost plays at some point got to turn into actual plays. And it's just not happening for him. But I still think he has all the ability in the world. When it's clicking for him, he's a physical freak. He's the strongest guy on the field. He can bull rush. He can beat guys with speed. He does a lot of things well, and on paper, he should be a successful defensive end. I thought it was really interesting earlier this offseason when he openly talked about just how his mental approach to the game wasn't on point to where it needs to be, and that he was trying to find ways to just keep his confidence up and just not allow himself to feel too down when he goes 2 games without a sack, because he came back last year and he looked really good, and then he hit a little dry patch. And it just kind of messed him up mentally, and he wasn't able to stick with it. So it just kind of sounds like, and that helped it all make sense, because physically there's nothing that he can't do, and we see it. And if he can find a way to just stay in the moment, not get down, I think he can reach his potential. But it's a long road at this point. He had 2 sacks last year. I mean, he's got to get those numbers up. It's a contract year. I mean, well, it just feels like it's now or never for him. And I think the patience with him, 2 first-round picks, the investment in him, it has to pay off. And I think this team needs it to pay off. I mean, yeah, they just got Payton Turner, but look, it was supposed to be Cam Jordan was supposed to be able to age. Marcus Davenport was supposed to be the next guy. Then you bring in Turner. Now you got your 2 pass rushers again. And if that's the way it works out, great. It's starting to seem less and less likely every year, but he's not he's not someone that I think anyone will ever close the book on, just because he can do everything. It's just he actually has to do it. And like I said, I can't bet on him at this point anymore. I got to see it. Like, show me that you can do it. And I think that's kind of where the team is at with it too.
Right. And it's crazy because it's hard to like write him off, like you said, because when he flashes. And it's one of those things where everybody watching on TV, you can see it from TV, from my couch. Oh, that was Marcus Davenport. So it's just hard to write him off because his ceiling is so high. So I'm excited to see what he does this upcoming season, because we're going to, like you said, we're going to need him, especially if we have, questions at the number 2 corner position and the secondary might maybe have an injury or two. We need the defensive line to ball out. And so I want to ask you this. Recently, Quan Alexander visited with the Saints. Can you give us some updates on where the Saints might be with that? Are they still considering bringing him in?
So after he left, I was told there's like nothing imminent happening with it. And, typically a guy will come in and they sign or they leave. He left. I don't think the door's closed on that. I think it's just they wanted to find out where he was at health-wise. He did tear an Achilles. I'd be shocked if he was ready to play like early in the season. I think it'll probably still take some time. So I think they wanted to get an update on that, and then just kind of see what he's thinking about money-wise. And he'll probably go out there and see what other interest there is, if there's more money or not. I'm sure the Saints would welcome him back at a very low-cost deal, but I don't think that's a move where I don't think they have to add a linebacker. I know they like Pete Werner, and we'll see. He's a rookie. I think there's a lot to prove, but they drafted him in the second round at a spot where they had a clear need. So I think that's probably the path forward right now. But if there were an opportunity to bring Quan back, I'm sure that the door would be open for that.
Wow. Okay. So I'm excited to see. And we liked Quan. We saw him at DeMario. You just have a good time last season. They were all over the field, East Coast to West Coast type linebackers with the speed and strength, gang tackling. It just felt like the Saints defense played with a different, for lack of a better word, swagger when Quan Alexander was in the lineup. But thank you for coming on. But before we go, I want to ask you one last question. It's been a great 15-year run with Sean Payton and Drew Brees. And I have to ask you, outside of the Super Bowl, what's one of your favorite Drew Brees moments?
Oh man, there's so many.
It's hard.
Yeah, when he broke the record, I mean that was a pretty special moment to be in that building and see it. The spin move against Atlanta, I'll never forget that one. That's definitely up there. What was it? The game against Carolina where he broke the consecutive completions. I mean, that was a crazy game. Like, there's just so many like things that he did that were just unbelievable to watch, and even just some small things throughout the years. Just these little moments where you just kind of remember that. He reminds you that Drew made it easy to forget that like how efficient he was and just how next level he was. And then every now and then like something would happen to where like he would remind you that he's an alien. It's like, oh my God, like. He would even find ways to raise his own level. So I think really though, just like the totality of it and just the efficiency and, not making the mistakes from, 17 to 19, like just he couldn't throw the ball down the field anymore. So like he just found a new way to win. And in 18, until he got hurt, people really thought he was the MVP in a year where Patrick Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns. So like he was playing at a crazy level, like even when his physical ability was just, almost all the way gone. So I just say all of it. I mean, it's just so hard to pick like one or two moments. It's just, I think Drew's career, like just the mass of it is just so unbelievable.
Right. And you look back at his career, like, and in San Diego, people had no idea he would be this Hall of Fame type player. And the way he came into New Orleans, and I remember sitting down with my dad, he's like, we got this guy named Drew Brees. Then my dad flipped out. We got Reggie Bush. And then we didn't even know that Drew Brees would be the one to take the Saints and make them a household name in the NFL. I live up here in Maryland and Virginia. And I'm sure you've been to Pennsylvania since leaving. And you seeing Saints fans all over the place that you would have never saw about 15 years ago. And me and my dad are just shocked every day that we see it. But it's a new era. We're getting into training camp, and we're going to see how these position battles line up. We're going to see how the offseason unfolds, who the Saints pick up, if they make any moves, and how they'll do this upcoming season. But I want to thank you, Nick, for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Man, I really appreciate it. You guys check out his work at Neworleans.Football.com. Also follow him on Twitter at Nick Underhill, and definitely, comment, engage with him, because he likes to talk about the New Orleans Saints, and he's going to be giving us that all season. But thank you guys for watching this week's episode. I'll be back to give you guys those training camp updates and following Nick and just talking about what he's talking about. And other than that, you guys have a great day. Be safe. Peace.